Diamandis. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here. First off, allow me to thank the organizers, Kalisa, Achilles, and of course, most importantly, Nikki. Nikki, you are a force to be reckoned with. You are a secret weapon in Greece's arsenal for innovation and for creating its future. So, I've called this talk sort of Abundance and Exponentials 101. The future is better than you think, and it's faster than you think. But let me begin. I'm a product of Greece. Both my parents were born on the island of Lesbos, my father in Mystigna, my mother in Mytilene. My sister Marcella and I grew up here every summer, coming to the Archea here in Athens, visiting the black sands of Santorini, the beautiful beaches of Crete, Rhodes, the Kyklades. I grew up in a family that respected most of all education, respect, family, culture, love. It was the basics for who I became. And I can't imagine to be in your feet, to sit in your seats of what the last 10 years have been like. I'm sure there have been incredible hardships across this nation. But I also know that there is no crisis that you should waste. And the question is, what have the last 10 years taught? And what passion and innovation for change and desire to create a future? Because I do believe that we're living in a world where the future is what you make it to be. So, as you're sitting here in this audience, you're not just an average Greek. You're here because something in your heart and your soul called you to be here. Each of you are emissaries for the conversation we're about to have over the next 2 days, to understand what these exponential technologies are going to do, how they're going to scare us, how they're going to excite us, how they're going to enable us, most importantly, how they're going to change us. Your mission over these next 24 to 48 hours is to see what speaks to your heart and to take that home to your company, to your family, to your village, to your city, wherever you go, and to share. Because ultimately, the message here is one of hope and one of opportunity, one of change and one of possibility. So let's begin. I'm going to share with you a look at where the world is going. Not where it's going for Greece, not where it's going for Athens, where the world is going. And I can start by saying this, and I truly believe this in all of my hearts, that we are alive during the most extraordinary time ever in human history. Despite the challenges, the issues, the hardships, this is the most extraordinary time. You may not think this, you may not know this, but each and every one of us is more empowered than any time ever in human history. I hope you'll get this at the end of this talk. Any one of you, if you truly wanted to, could go and spin up 1,000 processor cores on Amazon Web or Azure or Google Cloud. You have access to more capital than any time in human history. I know that's hard to believe, and I hope you'll stick with me for a little bit to understand what that means. You also have expertise available throughout the planet, one click away. The other thing that's true is that I don't think any of us truly understand how fast the world is changing. If you thought the last 10 years were challenging and difficult, the next 20 years are going to challenge us even more. Not just us here in Greece, but the world. Because over the next 20 years, we're going to reinvent what it means to be human. We're going to reinvent what it means to raise our family, to govern our nations, what it means to run our companies and our industries. So this talk, for me, is more to the students and the entrepreneurs. Because as a student and as an entrepreneur, a time of rapid change is a time of incredible opportunity. And the single most important thing that you need to know and that I feel I need to know is, what am I passionate about? Where am I going? What do I want to create? What is it that drives me every single morning and every single day, and what do I want to do with my life? Because let me tell you, the capabilities to do those things are here, and they're getting more and more powerful. So here's the challenge. All of us evolved on the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. And back then, the world was local and linear. And the brains that we have, the 100 billion neurons, the 100 trillion synaptic connections that shape the way we see the world, evolved for this world. A world that was local and linear. Nothing changed century to century, millennium to millennium. Right? But the world today is global and exponential. If something happens in the United States or China or India, you know about it seconds later. Computers know about it microseconds later. Things are not changing decade to decade or year to year. They're now changing month to month. If I were to graph it, it looks like this. This red line is all of us. It's our parents, it's our yayas, our papus, it's our politicians, it's our customers, our board members. We have not had a hardware or software upgrade in 22 million years. This yellow line, it's computers, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality, blockchain, the stuff that you're here to talk about for the next 2 days. It's doubling in power every 12 to 24 months. And the difference between that linear human, all of us, and all that exponential tech is either disruptive stress or opportunity, depending on your point of view. So, when I talk about exponentials, what does that even mean? This is Singularity University in Silicon Valley, where my dear friend and partner Ray Kurzweil and I started this institution now some 11 years ago. Rob Nell is now our CEO there. I'm proud to serve as the executive founder. And we study exponentials. We teach to the largest corporations in the world, to graduate students from around the planet. We have an amazing global startup program. Our goal is 1,000 startups a year, 10,000 startups over the next decade. The challenge is, again, that all of us, in our days, in our strife, in raising our kids, we're all linear thinkers. I say to you, where are you going to be in 30 linear steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 30 steps, I'm in row 10, 30 meters away. Right? I'm really great linear projector. But if I said to you, where are you going to be in 30 exponential steps? Where an exponential is a simple doubling, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. In 30 doublings, I'm not in row 10. In 30 doublings, I'm 1 billion meters away. Put differently, I've gone 26 times around the planet. And that difference between my linear mind and this exponential growth of technology is challenging. We humans don't think that way. And all of a sudden, things appear out of no place. The world is changing faster and faster. And what do? The tsunami of change. How do we surf on top of the tsunami instead of being crushed by it? That's what the conversations over the next 2 days. You're here because these forces are the most powerful forces. It's more than socio-political. These are the forces that are happening day in and day out that make nations, that change industries. And these are forces that you as entrepreneurs and leaders in Greece need to understand, embody, use to create your vision for the future. So all of this today is riding under what we call Moore's Law. This is Gordon Moore, one of the founders of Intel, who in 1965 publishes a very famous paper. He says, we've noticed something over the last 7 years. The number of transistors on a piece of silicon has roughly doubled every 12 to 18 months, and it's likely to continue. It's continued for 50 years, and we now call this Moore's Law. This is what it looks like. This was Intel's first integrated circuit, 2 transistors. This was their first commercial product, the Intel 4004, 2,300 transistors, $1 each. Fast forward 45 years to today. This is the Core i9 inside many of your devices. 7 billion transistors, 27 billion-fold price performance increase. I don't know what that means, like 27 billion-fold. But let me give you another way of seeing how fast the world is changing. Back in 1956, this was a 5 megabyte hard drive, $120,000. And if you happen to have a cargo airplane, you could move it from location to location. Now, we noticed when this happened, right? 2005, 25 times more memory, 1,000 times cheaper. Pretty amazing. But did we notice when this happened, when 9 years later, now it's 1,000 times more memory for the exact same price? But it doesn't stop here, right? Because today it's a terabyte for something that fits in your pocket, that is the size of your nail. This is a 10 trillion-fold price performance increase. Here's the point. It's not slowing down. In fact, the rate of change is accelerating. So if you look at the amount of computational growth between 1900 and 2010, this is a slide from the Singularity is Near, Ray Kurzweil's book. If you're part of the SU or abundance community, and I know many of you are, you've seen this chart over and over and over again. And it's okay, you should still see it another 1,000 times. What this is showing us is the amount of computation $1,000 can buy you. Right? So back in 1900, $1,000 bought you a little bit. Today, if you go to a Dell store or Octobit and you buy computational power, it's buying you about a little less than 10 to the 14 cycles per second. In just 5 years, in 2023, now it's buying you the computational power of the human brain. 25 years later, now it's buying you the computational power of the entire human race. Now $1,000 goes a long way, and your kid's homework gets really easy. So what we're seeing and what we study at Singularity University is that these faster, cheaper computers, which are everywhere, always on the cloud, getting cheaper, faster, more available. On top of that computational power is riding all of these exponentials: AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality. And many of you here are experts in one or two of these, but it's the combination of 3, 4, and 5 coming together in unexpected fashions that are creating new business models, transforming what nations are doing. And it's this force of convergence and this exponential rise over not 100 years, not 50 years, the next 20 years that we can't ignore. We're going to create more wealth in the next 10 years than we have in the entire past century. We're also going to change every industry here. So what I teach at Singularity University and at Abundance 360 is what I call the 6 Ds. It's the notion that anything we digitized photography, manufacturing, finance, biology, whatever we digitize enters a period of slow, deceptive growth. The first digital camera was 0.01 megapixels. The next year it was 0.02, then 0.04, then 0.08. It all looked like zero. And Kodak ignored the digital camera that they had invented. 30 doublings later, 1 billion times better, digital photography disrupted film. And what we see then is this that follows over and over again. We dematerialize, we demonetize, and we democratize products and services. What in the world does that mean? This is what it means. 20 years later, all of these things fit in your pocket. Right? All of these things have become ones and zeros. The marginal cost of transmission is zero. The marginal cost of duplication is zero. We don't think about the fact that a child with a smartphone in Africa has millions of dollars of free capability that you and I would have spent that for just 20 years ago. They have two-way video conferencing, high-definition video and still cameras, libraries of books and records for free. That's crazy. Modern economics just don't account for any of this. We'll hear from that from Amin. And then there's this demonetization that's taking place, where we may not feel it, we may not think it, but everything is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, more and more and more. And we'll talk about this today because it's changing the face of the world. And the advantage for dematerialization and demonetization is democratization, that you can be a high school kid here in Athena and literally reach 1 billion people in Africa if you've got the right idea and the right app. You had to have been Muhtar Kent or Jeff Immelt at Coca-Cola or GE to actually reach that many people. All right, let's talk about one of the implications about exponentials that I love and I teach, and for me, it's one of the most important messages I can share here with SU Athens, which is that exponentials are bringing us a world of abundance. It may not feel like it, and we'll talk about this. So I wrote a book back in 2011, 2012 called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. I was very proud. I was the closing speaker at the Clinton Global Initiative. And President Clinton, when he's introducing the book and he's quoting from the book, he says, "Peter, why are you so damn positive about the future? Don't you watch the news?" And I said, "President Clinton, with all honesty, no, I don't. And I'm positive because I look at the data." So on the first note, because I think it's important to understand this, our mindsets is the most important thing we have. How you think about the world is everything. Everything. If you think the world is going to hell in a handbasket, if you think there's no future for tomorrow, how are you going to act? Are you going to invest? Are you going to educate yourself? Are you going to look towards the future, or are you going to hide under the bed? It turns out that as we were evolving on those savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, we evolved an ancient piece of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala, about the size of your thumb, scans everything you see and everything you hear for negative news. And if you see negative news, it puts you on red alert, right? Because back then, 100,000 years ago, a piece of good news, well, that's great. You miss a piece of bad news, your genes were out of the gene pool. And so we paid 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. And the news media's job is what? It's to deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers. And so if you open the newspaper, the radio, the television, whatever it is, and you look at the news coverage, it's 10 to 1 negative to positive. It's not to say that it's not true, but it is for sure not a balanced view of what's going on in the world. Because you ignore the positive headlines, as do I to a large degree. But let's look at the data. Because over the last 100 years, the per capita income for every nation has more than tripled, the human lifespan has doubled, the cost of food has dropped 30-fold, the cost of transportation, energy 50-fold, transportation hundreds of fold, communications millions of fold. There's a huge amount of data. This is people living in extreme poverty over the last 200 years have plummeted. Why has this been happening? Why has this been happening to humanity? If you look at literacy rates from 15% to nearly 92% over the last 200 years, again, why? This eye chart over here is the average number of years of school in the US, South Korea, China, India, Iraq, Haiti, is exploding. Why are kids going more to school now over the last 200 years? This is children living past the age of 5, or should I say dying before the age of 5. 200 years ago, 45% of children never made it to age 5. Today it's 4%, still too high. This is maternal mortality rate. It used to be dangerous to have a child. Why has this plummeted? This is average life expectancy. For all of human history, we would give birth at age 13. Then by age 26, our child was having a child. By age 30, we were gone. Now we've doubled the human lifespan. We're going to double it again. Are you worried about overpopulation? Don't be. Bill Gates has showed us you do two things to a city or a country. You make them healthier and better educated. The number of children go into rapid decline. Right? This is the number of children, 6 children per family, 5 children per family, rapidly falling off. A lot of my friends in Silicon Valley are worried about underpopulation of planet Earth, not overpopulation of planet Earth. Here's another chart. Around the world, the number of children per family is about to drop below the replacement rate on the planet. This is hours worked per week. We forget how brutal it was. 100 years ago, you would work 80, 100 hours a week to survive, and then you'd be dead by age 40. We forget how good we have it today. Agreed, there's a lot of hardship going on, but we forget that life was short and brutish just 100 years ago, let it go 200 or 500 years ago. Why has the number of hours per week been dropping that people have to work to live? This is deaths due to airplanes in red. Airliners are the safest means of transportation on the planet. In 2017, 0 commercial deaths. This blue line is from car accidents, 1.3 million deaths per year, and when we go to autonomous electric cars, that will go to 0 too. This is death rate from natural catastrophes. Why is it dropping in the 70s, 80s, and 90s? This is the number of democracies in green growing around the world. And then finally, this is from a friend's book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, Steven Pinker at Harvard, who shows us we're living during the most peaceful time ever in human history. I want you to see this data. The reason this is all happening is the conversation we're here to have. It's the impact of exponential technologies changing our world. Technology is the force that takes what used to be scarce and makes it abundant. I opened my book, Abundance, with the story of Napoleon III. The year is 1861. He's at the Palace of Versailles, and he's invited his royal guest, the King of Siam, over for dinner. To show how rich he is, Napoleon feeds all of his troops with silver utensils. Napoleon himself eats with gold utensils, and the royal guest, the King of Siam, he's fed with aluminum utensils. Because in the year 1861, aluminum was the most precious metal on the planet. Even though the Earth's crust is 8.3% aluminum in the form of bauxite, it was so energetically difficult to extract the aluminum from the bauxite, it was worth more than gold and platinum. It was rare, it was scarce. And then in France, the United States, in the same year, we developed this technology called electrolysis that made it so easy to extract the aluminum. We use it with a throwaway mentality. Here's another example. A friend of mine in Silicon Valley is the CEO of a company called the Diamond Foundry. They have a box about so big. In one end comes methane, electricity, and water. Out the other end comes perfect diamonds, 6, 8, 10 carats. How big would you like it? We're taught diamonds are scarce. Well, yes, until technology makes them abundant. What else do you think of as scarce? Energy. We're going to hear from Ramez Nam, an amazing speaker, who will tell us that we are bathed in 8,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species. It's not just in a usable form yet, but it's getting there very fast. We'll talk about water, health, learning, time, money, resource, expertise, labor, transportation. All of these things are going from scarcity to abundance. Let's talk about this example, one that impacts Greece and all of her youth and all of the entrepreneurs here today. About the communications abundance. Next year, and the years that follow, we're about to unleash onto the planet's surface something called 5G. Right? Your cell phone today is on a 4G network, 10 to 100 megabits per second. 5G is going to be 10 to 100 gigabits per second. It's downloading a feature motion picture in under a second. It's connecting everything, everyone on this planet. If that's not enough, Google has just spun out Loon, a network of stratospheric balloons. If that's not enough, a company called OneWeb, backed by $1.2 billion of SoftBank's money, is about to deploy 900 satellite constellation, connecting the world at gigabit connection speeds. If that's not enough, SpaceX is building a satellite network called Starlink with 4,000 satellites, and then another layer of 7,000 satellites. So this is what it looks like. This was 2017. 3.8 billion humans connected on planet Earth. In the next 6 to 8 years, we're about to connect everybody, right? 8 billion people are about to be online. 4.2 billion new minds. 4.2 billion new minds who are coming online not like I did at 9600 baud. They're coming online at a gigabit connection speed, with access to the world's information on Google or Baidu, with the ability to spin up 1,000 processor cores or 3D print on the cloud or access quantum computers on the cloud. What are these 4.2 billion new minds going to want to consume, desire, upload, download, buy, create? They represent tens of trillions of dollars flowing into the global economy. They represent, if not your direct customer, your customer's customer. You can reach any of these 8 billion people. There are 8 billion people that you can collaborate with. There are 8 billion people that you can talk to, transact with, co-create with. We're connecting the human brain, all 8 billion of us. But it's not just people that we're connecting, right? It's everything. It's the Internet of Things. My friends at Cisco call it the IoT, the IoE. By 2020, 50 billion connected devices, 1 trillion sensors. By 2030, 500 billion connected devices, 100 trillion sensors. What does this mean? It means that we're heading towards a world where everything is being sensed and measured, where you can know anything you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want. I've got my EKG in my steps. I've got my Oura ring that measures my sleep. I've got a whole slew of sensors in my phone. At the end of the day, there's going to be a point in time where you can know anything. In Earth orbit today, there are hundreds of privates of satellites. I know the number in the United States, by 2021, 1.6 million drones flying over the air, imaging in centimeter resolution. Every autonomous car, and there will be tens and hundreds of millions of them, are generating 750 megabits of data per second from LiDAR and radar in imaging. Seeing everything, everywhere, on every road. And then augmented reality goggles, whatever they become, in millimeter resolution, seeing the world. We're entering a world where everything is being seen. It's a world of radical transparency, a world where you can ask any question you want. Your AI can go gather the data and bring it back to you. It's a dramatically different world. If you thought that the world was going to slow down and relax and we'd reached the pinnacle, guess again. What you're going to see over the next 2 days is amazing. It's a glimpse into the future. It's a future that's coming at us that's not stoppable. It's a question of what you want to do. You can learn or you can hide. You can get excited and say, how can I use that? Or you can get fearful. Are we going to have enough raw materials for everybody in this world of the future? For the solar, for the batteries, for the electric cars? I love this. We're entering a period of resource abundance. This is an image about a year ago off the coast of Japan. In the ocean floor in the silt was discovered a 400-year supply of rare earth metals, enough for all the batteries, computers, electronics we could want just off the coast of Japan. Every time we look, we discover more. But if that's not enough, one of my passions is space. As Nikki and Nico said, Star Trek since my childhood. I remember watching it from my cousins' homes here in Athens. The asteroids that come close to the Earth, these metallic chondrites, are rich in platinum, osmium, rubidium. Just 1/2 meter asteroid, easier to get to than the surface of the moon. It's got more platinum than mined in the human history, right? There are 2,500 of these asteroids, worth on the order of $5 trillion each. There's a massive amount of resources out there. There is no scarcity of resources. It's just a matter of how we look and how far we look. Capital, and this is a sensitive topic in Greece, for sure. But let's look at this number, right? We're seeing an extraordinary explosion of capital around the world in almost every area. So in new venture capital, Europe, 19.1 billion last year. We hit a new peak of capital available for venture and startups. In Asia, $48 billion last year. We're hitting peaks again this year. In the United States last year, $84 billion. Year after year, high point after high point. But you say, listen, I can't reach that venture capital. It's not for me. I'm just a young entrepreneur. Well, check this out. Are you familiar with crowdfunding, where the crowd loves your idea, your project, and funds you on sites like Indiegogo or whatever it might be? Last year, $34 billion in 2017. By 2025, $300 billion. Let me tell you this. Hear me loud and clear. This crowdfunding doesn't care where you live. Doesn't care if you're in Kalamata, where I was yesterday, or in Lesbos, or in Ethiopia, or in Silicon Valley. It's what your idea is that matters. What you're passionate about, what you're committed to, what's in your mind, what you commit to do. That's what matters. Let's talk about another subject of passion to me, which is about longevity and vitality. One of my personal missions is to make 100 years old and you 60. How do we have the aesthetics, the mobility, the cognition at 100 that we had at 60 or 50? How do we add 20 or 30 healthy years onto everyone's life? So instead of in the last 20 years, instead of being in a wheelchair, you're out enjoying, you're here having these conversations. So I've had the pleasure to start 2 companies, co-found Singularity with an amazing, brilliant man, Dr. Bob Hariri, and Human Longevity with Bob and Craig Venter. I'm an investor and advisor to a number of other technology companies in the space. And in the FDA labs today and around the world are incredible technologies on senolytic medicines and Wnt pathway manipulators and stem cell research and young blood derivatives. And all of these things have incredible promise. I truly believe we're going to add 10 to 20 healthy years this decade, and then 30 to 40 in the decade that follows. My dear friend Ray Kurzweil talks about something called longevity escape velocity. He says there's going to be a time for every year that you live, science is extending your life for more than a year. They call that longevity escape velocity. I asked Ray, when does he expect that to happen? He said, probably in the next 12 years. I said, oh, okay. I'm going to make sure I wear my seatbelt and I wear my helmet when I'm skiing. Here's one example. This is my company that I'm co-founder and vice chairman of, called Singularity. The research has shown us that as we are born, we have hundreds or thousands of times more stem cells than we do when we age. And it drops off over age. And these stem cells are the regenerative engine. These are the cells that go and find areas of inflammation or damage and repair and differentiate into that tissue. And the work that's being done at Singularity right now is to actually replace those stem cells in your body to rejuvenate the regenerative engine, so that as you grow older in animal models, you replenish the stem cells. It adds 20, 30, sometimes 40% of the lifespan. At the same time that this is going, we have decoded the human. We'll learn more about this, right? When the Human Genome Project and Craig Venter were working on sequencing all 3.2 billion letters of your life, it was, on the order of $100 million and 9 months to sequence your genome back in 2001. Today, it's under $1,000. Next year, it's predicted to be $100 in 1 hour to sequence all 3.2 billion letters of your life. But that's just the beginning. Because now that we can sequence you, we can start to perhaps even edit you. Edit you? What are you talking about? Designer babies? Well, check this out. CRISPR 2.0 that came out of MIT and Harvard recently has the ability to edit a single letter out of your 3.2 billion. You say, well, what does a single letter mean? 32,000 out of 50,000 human diseases is caused by one letter being off in your genome. Just one. Whether it's thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, or whatever it might be. Imagine being able to go and edit that and release the rest of your lineage from that disease. Amazing. I'm going to close on one of the areas that I'm excited about, which is the concept of expertise abundance. It's the notion that wherever you live here in Greece, you have access one click away to any expert you need. It doesn't matter who lives in the house next to you or the village next to you. We're living in a global ecosystem of incredible cognitive surplus. So the question is, what problem is it that you want to solve? And then how do you find those people to go into the world and solve it with you? So when I was growing up, it was this problem. I wanted so badly to be an astronaut. I dreamt of it every day. Every day. I think my sister Marcelle was sick of it by the time I was 10. I wrote to NASA, I wanted to be an astronaut. Apollo showed me what the world could do right now. Amazing, this was 49 years ago, huh? Crazy. Crazy. I dreamt about this. I wanted this so badly. And then this scientific documentary, Star Trek, thank you. It showed us where the world was going, what was possible for a hopeful humanity. And so this is what I wanted for myself. And then I looked at the chances of becoming a NASA astronaut, 1 in 1,000. And I said, I have a better chance of becoming a professional basketball star at 5'5" than I do becoming a NASA astronaut. And one day I read about this guy, Charles Lindbergh, who in 1927 flew from New York to Paris to win a $25,000 prize, offered up by Frenchman Raymond Orteig, who said, I'm going to offer $25,000 to the first person who flies from New York to Paris, his new home to his place of birth. And amazingly, 9 different teams spent $400,000 trying to win this $25,000 prize. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to create a prize for private spaceflight, and I'm going to find the experts in the world and say, solve my problem, give me my flight into space. Well, this was the prize. It was going to be a $10 million prize. I didn't have $10 million at the time, but it was going to be for a spaceship that could carry 3 million people up, three people up, down, and do it again within 2 weeks. Amazingly, 26 teams from 7 countries around the world spent $100 million going after this $10 million prize. They're all optimists. It was incredible. The winning vehicle here, Spaceship One, under the Smithsonian, here is now under the Smithsonian, and it really showed the world that a small team could do things that only the largest governments and the largest corporations could do before. On the heels of this, Richard Branson came in and bought the rights to create Virgin Galactic. I now have my seat to fly to space sometime in the next couple of years. And at the end of the day, this vision and realization that I had this challenge of wanting to go to space, and I didn't know how. But I didn't have to know how. I just needed to know what my target was, and then ask the world to help me. So what is your challenge? What is the problem that you want to solve for yourself, for your family, for your company, for your community? And how do you partner with the world to solve that? Because that's the world we're living in today. It's not about having to have all the expertise inside your company or inside your village. It's about going out to this planet, a giant village. On the heels of this XPRIZE being won, I was able to build an amazing board of trustees from Larry Page and James Cameron and Jim Giannopoulos and Aria Huffington and Ray Kurzweil, and asked the question, what are the problems in the world that are not being solved? And what's the target we can give to people to try and solve them? We've launched over $150 million worth of prizes. Another $200 million are in development. I have the chance to work with an amazing board of directors, an amazing innovation board. I have my dear friend Soni Mordecai here, who is our chair of our board here with me, a fellow Greek. So what have we been working on? We have something called the Qualcomm Tricorder XPRIZE. We just announced the winner. If you think about Star Trek, you remember the tricorder. This is a device that you can give to a mother or father at 2 o'clock in the morning when their child is sick, that they can diagnose themselves, not a doctor or a nurse. This is about reducing the cost of healthcare. The eventual healthcare in the future, and we'll talk about this, the best diagnosis, the best surgery will eventually be from an AI or a robot. There'll be implications of that, of course, but it really means demonetization and democratization of healthcare. Here's an XPRIZE that's going on right now. This is called the Global Learning XPRIZE. Elon Musk put up the $15 million, the DeVos family, a dear friend Tony Robbins, and we asked teams around the world to build a piece of Android software that could go on a tablet and take any child on the planet from complete illiteracy to reading, writing, and numeracy on their own in 15 months. About 700 teams entered. We're down to 5 finalists. Google gave us 5,000 tablets. We're in the hands of 2,500 kids right now in Tanzania who don't speak any English or any Swahili. The winning software is going to be open source, so we can manufacture 1 billion teachers per year. It's about scale. This is our carbon XPRIZE. Pull the CO2 out of the smokestack and turn it into a product more valuable than the cost of extracting it. This is an XPRIZE we just announced a few months ago at South by Southwest called the Avatar XPRIZE. This is about creating robots that you can occupy. So I want you to imagine, I'm not here, there's a robot here on stage. It may look like me. I'm back home in Santa Monica. There, I'm in my pajamas, I have VR goggles on, I have a haptic suit, and as I walk around Santa Monica, the robot walks around here. As I come out and shake your hand, the robot shakes your hand. I feel like I'm here, you feel like I'm here. These avatar robots, in the next 5 years, they'll go into disaster places, they'll give medical care, they'll help in all kinds of situations. I'm very proud that my world of XPRIZE has interfaced with my world here in Greece. I was down in Kalamata yesterday with my sister, Sony, and my dear friend, Dr. Jyotika Vermani, who is the head of Planet and Environment, the executive director there. Shell and NOAA challenged teams to build robots that could go down 4,000 meters under the ocean surface and map 250 square kilometers in 24 hours. We know more about the surface of Mars and the surface of the moon than we do the floor of the sea. We're down to 5 finalists, and they're right down there, just 2 hours south right now, with amazing technology going down. And I mean, these are teams, I was blown away by them, right? These are teams of a 2-person team and a 10-person team that is transforming oceanography with an investment of $1 million or $3 million. Why? Because we gave them the challenge. Humans rise to incredible ability when you give them a target to shoot for. And say, I don't care where you went to school, where you live, what you've ever done. If you solve this problem, you win. And we all win, too. Last slide, second to last slide. 2 weeks ago, we had our biggest event at the XPRIZE. It's called Visioneering. It's where we set our targets of where we're going next. I was very proud. About 5 years ago, one of the ideas that came out of Visioneering was the idea of a water abundance XPRIZE. Do you know that half the disease burden on planet Earth is due to unclean drinking water? We talk about water wars and water scarcity. But we live on a water planet, right? 2/3 of our planet is oceans. Yes, 97.5% is salt. We fight over 2% at the polar caps. 2% of the polar caps, we fight over 0.5% in our fresh water system. So this was an XPRIZE that asked teams to pull 2,000 liters of water out of the atmosphere, out of the biosphere, for under 2 cents per liter from all renewable energy. And we awarded it just 2 weeks ago. I'll close on this. A negative mindset will never give you a positive life. I truly believe we are alive during the most extraordinary time ever in human history. The single most precious, most important thing is the committed, passionate human mind. What do you want to create for yourself, for your family, and for your nation? Because there are no limitations. If you'd like these slides, you can just send an email here. You'll get them, share them, an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you again, Nikki, for the invitation. Thank you.
Peter, thank you so much for pushing the boundaries of our thinking. Thank you. So I'm sure every single one in this room and on live stream has lots of questions to ask you, but we only have time for one. So listen, I'm going to pick you up on your notion of abundance. We all understand it, but if you are a business person in Greece today, or a young person out of college, or a young entrepreneur, you know what kind of dragons I have to slay day in, day out? Much more fundamental problems. You know, what do you tell us? How do we rise out of this everyday situation that we're in?
So I think it's important to realize Greece is not an island unto itself. You're alive on this planet, and this planet is more interconnected than ever before. I know it's a temptation to only focus on what can I do here, but Greeks are the most educated populace around, with the highest fluency in other languages. I think it's critically important to see the world as an opportunity to connect to the world, to be able to see what products we can create here to export to the world. I think education is, first and foremost, the single most important thing. I mean, that's why I was so excited about when Nikki intersected SU here in Athens. I think that your ability to stay mindful of all of these technologies and to educate yourself, whether it's in machine learning or just how to 3D print on the cloud, it's a new language for the future. And as I think about for my kids, there are three important things that are the single most important for any student, any entrepreneur listening. Number one, what are you most passionate about? You need to find your personal passion. For me, it was space. Space drove every single thing I've ever done because that I learned for myself, not from my parents, not from my teacher. I learned for myself because that was my passion. So if you don't know your passion, find it. There is nothing more important. If you know your passion, you will rise to incredible heights. There will be no limitations that can hold you back. Because at the end of the day, doing anything significant is difficult and hard. And believe me, a lot of my successes were overnight successes after 11 years of hard work, of being told no over and over and over again. And if I was doing it for the money or doing it for my folks, I would have stopped. But I was doing it for my heart. The second thing for my 7-year-olds is ask great questions. I think the ability to ask great questions is more important than any time, whether you're a CEO or a child. In a world where you can know anything, anytime, anywhere, it's the quality of the questions that you ask. Become a great question asker. And then the third is don't ever, 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 ever give up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a very important conversation about Greece, which is coming up later this afternoon with Alexis Papachelas. So we're looking forward to picking up the discussion at that time again with you.
I look forward to that very much.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.